Welcome to the Private Practice with Soul podcast. My name is Dr. Brooklyn Storme, and I help private practice owners align their business back with their soul's calling, with their big vision and with their soul's purpose. Unlike other private practice coaches, I've traveled the world in search of spiritual resources, spiritual tools, education and information so that you can have the transformation that your soul desires and needs so that you can up-level your business. How much fun is this? I love it so much. Guys, if you're not already a member of the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group, please check out the show notes. I would love for you to be there. In the meantime, thank you so much for pushing play today. Let's begin. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast. As you know, I am your host, Dr. Brooklyn Storme, and I want to say thank you very, very much for giving me your attention and your ears this morning or this afternoon if you're listening after work. And welcome, of course, to the new subscribers. I hope that you're all having an amazing day. Just before we get started, I wanted to let you know that if you've been listening to the podcast and reading all of the content, and if you've been going into the new website, which is resources.brooklynstorme.com, you will be loving the new layout and the new format, and you can absolutely go and click around and grab all the free stuff. And for those of you who've purchased the Private Practice Startup Kit, that had a update over the weekend. So there's 2 new forms in there for you to go and grab free of charge. You get all those updates free for life. I mean, how cool is that? And I just want to let you know that I have 2 places available in my coaching program. But in saying that, I do have 2 discovery calls this afternoon. So if you're interested, all you need to do is just go over to the website resources.brooklynstorme.com, and there's a little module there called application to work with me, and you can just fill that out and I will get back to you within 24 hours. So on with the show. You know, I'm all about talking about my values and things like that. And I think this is all top of mind because we're studying this in the private practice method at the moment, and the women are just doing so well in there, and I'm so proud of them. And then we've got the women in the other group who are all working on alignment in their private practice at the moment. So it's like all happening, and it's just inspiration central. But one of them was asking me what my values are, and I thought, this is a really good question because I've only ever spoken about them sort of sporadically, haven't I? I haven't actually listed them all out because I guess in my mind I thought, well, who'd be interested to hear what my values are? But anyway, I thought today I would share one of my values with you, and I think it kind of relates to transformation. But really, I love to refer to myself as a possibilitarian. And what is a possibilitarian? Well, I think somebody who's a possibilitarian is someone who sees what's possible for themselves and sees what's possible for their clients and, for those around them, for those in their space. And to me, I guess I first really stepped into the role of being a possibilitarian a few years ago. And it was really as a result of, I think, some of the work that I was doing with my coach at the time. He said to me, you're all about, talking to people overseas and learning about their tools and techniques for spirituality and integrating those with life, but it's time for you now to really start applying them to your own life. So I guess with that sort of guidance from him, what I took away from that was, okay, I need to really get clear on what my life looks like now. And the way that I did that was I just simply started logging thoughts that came up as I remembered to log them. And so what I noticed was when I reflected, so I did this for about a week, which was hardcore because I was doing it in between clients and stuff like that. Plus, it's super confronting when you have to look at your own thoughts. You really want to write nice, lovely, flowery things all the time. But when you're doing it properly, the ugly stuff comes up, doesn't it? Things about yourself that you don't like, things that you're not happy with, etc. So anyway, got a logbook, so to speak, tracked my thinking, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And then what I did was really reflected on that, and I could very easily start to see patterns. And what I noticed was that a lot of the things that I had been thinking and saying and doing were falling within a category of what I call, constriction. That means I was really limiting myself by my thinking and by my actions. And I'll give you an example. I was working in Frankston, Victoria, which is a low socioeconomic area. And, I was in the different Facebook groups for psychologists at the time. And I would see the posts about people talking about their fees. And people were always saying that they had to bulk bill because they were in a low socioeconomic area. And you know what? I never questioned that. I didn't think to question it. I just thought everybody was better than me at running business, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was thirsty to learn how to run a practice properly. And so I took it as just a given that I would never be able to make money from my practice, and that I would never be able to be in good profit with my practice, and that I would be forever destined to bulk bill. And for those of you who don't know what bulk billing is, it means that you get a small amount of money as a therapist from the government. And when you bulk bill, it means that you don't charge your clients any money. So at the time, I think it was about $74 or something like that we would get for a session. But if the client didn't turn up, you got nothing, So it meant that you had to fill your diary, and you had to do things like have wait lists, and you had to, because if people weren't going to come, you needed to be able to, from a business perspective anyway, be able to call somebody and get them to come down, because yes, you wanted to help them, but also you wouldn't be able to pay the rent without that money coming in. And when you're bulk billing, a lot of the time you're working with a demographic that maybe, I don't want to make assumptions here, but perhaps they can't afford therapy, or perhaps they're not as invested in therapy. They come for lots of different reasons. Not everybody. There are people there who want support and help, and they want to get well, of course, but there are other people who come because their lawyer told them they need a letter from a psychologist that says that they have anxiety, and that's why they didn't pay their toll fines or their toll fees, or somebody else is needing a letter to get on the NDIS or something like that. So there are lots of different motivations in the bulk billing world. And I didn't question anything. I saw what all the other psychologists were talking about, and even psychologists who were in my area were saying that, and they'd been there longer than I had. And so I just thought, well, that's how it is. And so that became my reality. And when I started working with my coach, he was saying to me, well, why can't you charge money, or why can't you, cut back your hours? Because this was the other thing. I was working ridiculous hours. I would see my first client at 8 a.m. and I would see my last one at 8 p.m. Now, I'm not saying that, there were 12 clients booked in between those hours. I mean, some days there were, but because a lot of them were bulk billing, I might have only seen 6. But it meant that I was in the building for those 12 hours. And then I had, half an hour travel time to the building, half an hour travel time back home. So, it was getting to the point where it wasn't really sustainable, but I just accepted it, and I never questioned it. And so it was really by thinking about, okay, if I am really going to anchor here into the knowledge I've acquired from traveling overseas and talking to other people about spirituality and soul and the role of soul and what it all means and stuff like that, I need to start embodying it, like my coach said. And so what I came to realize was that when you come from ego and ego is not bad. I love ego. It's like, our own personal bodyguard that's there to make sure that we're alert and safe and stuff like that. I love ego. I think ego gets a bad name sometimes, but I love it. But at the same time, when we're in that sort of ego mindset, what can happen is, in an effort to protect ourselves from risk or harm or fear and things like that, we tend to shut down, and that's very constrictive. Some people would say, well, it's restrictive, and it is. And that goes against what I believe the soul is about. And I believe that the soul is expansive. And I believe that the soul is open and willing and ready and wanting to have a way of impacting the world in a really positive way, And so with that awareness, I started to think to myself, okay, so what could I say to myself that wouldn't be constrictive, that would be expansive? And I guess it all changed for me and it's so simple. It's like kind of embarrassing to say because it's so simple. I don't know why I didn't see it before. First of all, ask questions. Don't just follow. Don't do what I did and just believe what everybody else is talking about. Don't do that. You have your own path and your own story. Even if you're just starting out, you have your own path and your own story. So the first thing is, don't take everything to heart. Don't take everything on board. Don't let other people's experiences become your experience or your reality, because you get to be the author of your own book, right? You get to be the author of your own destiny in private practice and in life. And then the second thing is, if you are going to ask questions, ask them in a way that's really expansive. And for me, what I do now is, instead of saying something that's quite limiting, like I can't charge a fee, or I can't have good boundaries with my time, or I have to do this, that, or the other, I now say things like, okay, this is what I want. How can I make this happen? And so just by asking, how can I, those three little words, I've been able to expand my mindset, expand my practice, expand my joy, expand my gratitude, and all of those really amazing, beautiful things that we all dream of having in our private practice. And for example, like one of my coaches, he was $20,000 to work with US, and I had wanted to work with him for, it felt like, the longest time. But my mind was saying, you can't afford it. You should just, get his emails and just take what you can from his emails. He doesn't work with people like you. Like, you're a very small fish in a very big sea. And I was just saying all stuff like that to myself. But when I got more comfortable asking, how can I do this? What happened was, all of a sudden I became a problem solver and I became very resourceful. And for example, with that case there with that coach, I was like, okay, then how can I raise that $20,000 to work with him? And do you know what? It all just came really easily. I knew that if I worked with him, I was going to get fresh ideas on how I could claw back some of my time, how I could stop being exhausted, because I wouldn't be working 13 hours a day. I knew that if I was working with him, he was going to help me with things like my fees and shifting my mindset and all of those sorts of things. And what ended up happening was, of course, I found the money and I went on a payment plan, which was amazing. So I paid it off over, I think it was about 2 years, just small weekly repayments. And I had access to absolutely everything. I had access to him in between sessions, all of that. And it was really by seeing what was possible and finding a way to make this happen. How can I make this happen? I want this coaching, or I want this, whatever it is you want. It's happening. How can I do it? The other way that you could approach this is to imagine that you've already done it. So in my case, as an example, I could say, well, I've already signed up with my coach. How did I do this? How did I get to the place where I was able to sign up? And you'd be surprised when you ask yourself, how can I? You'd be surprised how resourceful you can be. And one of the strategies that really helped me so much was just having some scrap paper, which I don't have anymore, but having some scrap paper and just being able to brain dump all the different ways, no matter how ridiculous they were, that I could do something. So it wasn't just coaching, but like if I wanted to get a lease on a new building, and I had been telling myself it wasn't worth it, don't do it, other people do that, you're not other people, etc., etc. Brainstorming, okay, I've done it, how did I make it happen? Well, what I did was this. I went and spoke to my accountant and I shopped around and I negotiated a deal and I got a broker to help me. And do you know what I mean? Start thinking as if it's done and work backwards from there. And you'd be surprised at how much life opens up for you. And so for me, when I work with my clients, when I work with the women in my groups, when I'm teaching them the method and things like that, I'm always seeing what's possible for them. And that's just how my brain operates now. And yeah, that's why I call myself a possibilitarian. You don't want to say that 10 times fast. But I think the beauty of it as well is like I can lead by example with that. And I know what it's like to be, you don't even realize when you're in that mindset of constriction. You don't even realize it because you're running that same story about what you can't do and why you can't do it. You just run that story by default all the time. So what I really love to be able to do is see what's possible for them when they can't see it for themselves. And I love the look on their face when they kind of go, whoa, you mean I possibly could? And then we can nut it out together. And then they leave knowing, wow, hey, I can do anything. I can do X, Y, and Z. And it is possible. And wow. And, that whole new world or that whole new experience then becomes available for them too. So seeing what's possible is something that is important to me, not only in my work, but how I work. And it's also because it's part of my core values, it's part of my soul values, I also embody what's possible in my life. I always love to find a way of being able to do something. So that's a little bit about one of my values, and I would love to hear about one of your values too and how that impacted on your practice. And maybe even if you want to come on the show and talk about it, you can email me, and that's something that we can do as well, because it turns out that this is quite a popular topic and I didn't know that until this week. So I want to say you can do anything. You just have to open your mind, be open to receiving guidance, be open to releasing old ways of thinking that are no longer serving you, or look at how these old ways of thinking are serving you. Maybe they're keeping you off the hook for something else. It's not just fear of failure. Some of us also have fear of being successful and what that might mean. So just something to think about. And I want to say thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast today. If you loved it, review it, share it with your girlfriends. And thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast today. If you're looking for clarity, if you need help with branding, your processes, and bringing everything into alignment with your soul's purpose for your private practice, head to the show notes and click the link for more information about the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group. You are going to love it. I can't wait to see you in there. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.